Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel, and if it's your first time stopping by, welcome. So today I'm just going to be talking about 10 things to know when you're about to start your articles. So if you're on your route to becoming a chartered accountant in South Africa and you'd like to know how the experience may be and you'd like to have a heads up on what to expect, this video is for you, okay? Keep on watching. So the first thing I can tell you guys is that when you're doing your articles, you have to complete and get competencies along the way. So you do your articles in 3 years, right? Depending on the level of qualification you hold when you actually start doing articles, the standard for someone with a CTA or an honors or a postgraduate diploma in accounting is 3 years, right? So when you start doing your articles, you actually have to get competencies within those 3 years. So these competencies come in the form of professional skills and technical skills. Professional skills are those skills that you acquire from your behavior. So you guys know the fundamental principles, right? In the code of ethics. You know the fundamental principles like integrity, professional behavior, confidentiality, and so forth, right? Those are your professional skills, right, that you need to acquire throughout the duration of your articles. And your technical skills are those skills that are set by SAICA to say that you must have these skills. By the time they sign you off as a chartered accountant, you must have this set of skills. So this may consist of being able to plan the audit, being able to execute different sections of an audit. You can actually search on Google for the competencies that I'm referring to, and it will actually show you all the competencies that you are required to get throughout your training contract so that you can be signed off as a chartered accountant. If you don't manage to get those competencies, I think you can actually get a grace period, but it's advisable that you get those competencies within the set period of time to avoid any complications, okay? Because if you don't get those competencies, you won't get signed off and you won't become a chartered accountant. So yeah, that's something I found out when I started doing my articles, that okay, you know what, I actually have to work towards a goal. I'm not just going to work and just doing whatever. I have to be smart even with the tasks that I'm doing, so that I know that okay, by doing this section of an audit, I'm actually acquiring this competency, and now I can be able to say that I've acquired this competency. So what happens with these competencies is that SAICA actually keeps track of your progress. Like, it has a system in place to help like monitor your progress and monitor to see if you're actually getting competencies. So they have a website that they have when you're registered as a trainee under a certain firm, then you can be able to have access to that system that SAICA has put in place to keep track of your progress. So every 2 months you are meant to do a skills review. Every 2 months. And then every 6 months you're supposed to do an ANA. So every 2 months, as you will be assigned to different audits, as you'll be assigned to do different things within the firm, you acquire some competencies, right? And then you're supposed to document them in the system that SAICA has. You're supposed to document them and you're supposed to rate yourself. So let me just give you an example so that you guys can just understand what I'm saying. So let's say for the professional skills are mostly based on the fundamental principles. So let's say you actually come to work early every day and you're always professional, you always wear work attire. That's actually a competency under professional behavior. So you can go there and say, I have acquired this competency because I come to work early and I dress professionally always. So that's just an example. It's just the most basic example of how you could go about this stuff. But obviously it gets more complicated when you start doing technical skills review, because you actually have to provide evidence of what you did and you actually have to rate yourself. There is a decision tree that you can use to help guide you on what rating you deserve according to how you feel like you perform. So you actually put in your evidence for the competence you think you acquired, and then you actually rate yourself. And then once you rate yourself, once you're done filling in all the competencies that you think you've acquired and you've rated yourself, then there's gonna be a reviewer who's gonna come and review what what you've put in place. And if the reviewer agrees, then it's gonna be fine. You won't have any differences. But if the reviewer disagrees and maybe wants to rate you down or rate you up, then then there'll be a difference, and you just have to confirm it or disagree, dispute it, and then yeah. So your reviewer is probably gonna be your supervisor or your manager who will be on the audit that you'll be working on. So every time you put in your competencies, you address them to the reviewer who was managing you when you were actually doing that work, when you were performing that work. So you don't just address it to anyone, you address it to the person who was managing or supervising you, because they'll be the ones that will be able to tell if your rating is actually correct, if the rating that you used for yourself is actually correct. So that's the skills review you do every 2 months, and you must not miss it, because it's something that's actually used by SACA. It's something that goes to SACA, so you must not take that lightly. You must not miss the deadlines. And then every 6 months you have to do the ANA. An ANA is an assessment needs analysis. The ANA is done every 6 months. You must do it every 6 months, and then this will you actually be sitting down with your mentor, and you'll be discussing your progress. And at the end of the day, if they see that you are underperforming, then you might need to go under a development plan, so that they can get you to actually get the competencies that you need to be able to be signed off. So this is done every 6 months. So it's very advisable that in those 6 months you must have actually worked hard to have gotten all the competencies that you need, so that you don't have any trouble and you won't be put under a development plan. Okay, so that is just, I tried to summarize that briefly, but at least now when you get into the articles, you have an idea that you know that, okay, I'm gonna have to acquire competencies. So you're not gonna be sleeping, you're not gonna be slacking, you'll be doing your work and trying to get as much competencies as possible. The second thing you need to know is that to be able to qualify as a chartered accountant, you actually need to have worked for core hours. So in brief, core hours are hours spent on acquiring competencies, and attendance hours are hours spent on acquiring both the competencies and doing anything else that is work related. So whenever maybe you go to your firm and then you just be working on something that is not competency related, that is attendance hours. And your core hours can never be higher than your attendance hours, because there's going to be time where you're not going to be actually working on acquiring competencies, and that will be just your idle time or time that you just be doing general admin stuff. So your core hours can never be greater than your attendance hours. So in order for you to be signed off as a chartered accountant, you need to have actually gotten a minimum of 3,600 hours, core hours. So you need to have worked on an audit whilst acquiring competencies for 3,600 hours. So that's just something you need to keep in mind, so that you can keep track of, how many hours you've got, and so that if you are behind, you can put in more work, or you can ask for more projects to work on to cover up. But it's advisable that you just keep doing your work consistently, and usually it just works out. If you just do your work consistently and you don't take too much leave, it'll just work out at the end of the day. But yeah, just keep in mind that you just need to actually get 3,600 core hours. The third thing to know is that when you find a difference, so let's say you're auditing and you find that, there's a difference between the amount in the general ledger and the amount as per the bank statement or something. Don't just rush to tell your supervisor that you've noted something wrong or you found a finding. I know sometimes it can be like, oh, I found a difference, let me tell my supervisor, but you have to do some investigation first. Just verify that you didn't make a mistake and the difference is actually not as a result of a mistake you've made on your part. Just start by confirming, because I've seen this happen quite a lot of times, that I find a difference and then I actually go back and I check, and then I go back and I inspect other documents, or I redo that specific difference, and I realize that maybe it was just a human error. So it's good to avoid doing that before you actually tell your supervisor, and then your supervisor can come back to you and be like, but I just saw the amount. What are you talking about? So every time you get a difference, verify it first and then let your supervisor know if you're completely sure that there is a difference, just to avoid seeming like you are not thorough. So the fourth thing is that I've realized that when I started working on an audit client, I was kind of overwhelmed by the work. I was trying to understand the working paper. The working paper is where you actually perform your audit procedures, like you write down your evidence. If you've inspected, you write down your audit evidence and everything, right? So sometimes the working paper may be so complicated, and because it's new to you, you might get overwhelmed because of how everything is set up, right? That you get lost in actually trying to get the details correct, the calculations correct, that you forget to actually just verify if all your legends are there, things like your dates, if your figures are casted correctly, things like that. You can actually forget. I've realized that you can actually forget in your attempt to figure out the working paper and finish everything, right? You may forget to just those nitty-gritty things, but they are quite important, and if you don't do them, then you look like you didn't do your work thoroughly. So I know it might be overwhelming because obviously it's gonna be something new to you, but just make sure you go through your papers, you check for spellings. I mean, if in Excel you can do a quick spell check and then just make sure your spellings are correct and everything is in order before you actually sign it off and you submit it to your supervisor, because you don't want to be having some comments and review notes about stuff that you could have easily noted. That won't reflect really good on you, but then you could have easily avoided it by just taking a few minutes off to just review your work before you submit it. The fifth thing that I've got for you guys is when you start your articles, do not be shy or scared to ask questions. That is the time you actually have incentive to ask questions, because everybody knows that you're new, everybody knows that you don't know, so everybody is expecting you to ask questions. Make sure you understand everything before you get into it, because it's better for you to ask all the questions with the risk of maybe looking like you are just overbearing than for you to come back with mistakes and review notes and everything. There is nothing such as a silly question, okay? Because you might actually realize that you might want to assume, you might think of something and then you think, but that's too silly to ask, and then you go do your own thing because you thought that was a silly thing to ask, and then you find that what you did was wrong. Just remember that if you don't ask and you make a mistake, you'll be accountable. They'll come back and ask you why you didn't ask, why you did it this way, and you have to be accountable. So you better stay safe than sorry. Never pretend to understand your work, guys. Never pretend. Never be one of those people when the managers ask, do you guys understand? They explain something and they ask you, do you guys understand? Don't be that person who just says yes just for the sake of wanting to pretend to understand, because it will catch up with you guys. It will eventually start showing in your work, and you don't want that. The sixth thing I have for you guys is be on time, guys. Like I already mentioned earlier, being on time is a competency. So you're no longer just reading about these competencies, you actually have to live them. They are your life now. That's how you just have to be professional now. You just have to carry yourself with professional behavior all the time. So you don't want to be someone who's trying to become a chartered accountant and they're always late. So that's one thing. Just keep that in mind. I mean, if you're late, then you can't use being on time as a competence anyway. So small things like that make a huge difference in your image. Sometimes if you don't do them, then they reflect badly on you. Sometimes if you do come on time every time, I mean, it's expected of you. You'll also be wasting your core hours if you're always late anyway. So just arrive on time. So the seventh thing is that when inspecting documents, be it invoices, be it agreements, be it minutes of meetings, be very attentive, guys, because the devil is literally in the details. You may have been provided with a lease agreement that has expired. It could be by mistake. I mean, there is always human error, right? The client could have given you an expired lease agreement by mistake, and it's your responsibility to check the dates. And if you find yourself saying that it's fine and you agree everything and you say it's fine, you don't see any mistakes, you don't see any problems, you don't raise any findings with your supervisor, and then later on they find out that the lease was actually expired, it's gonna come back down to you, and it's gonna be like, you are the one who was in charge of inspecting. What happened? How can you explain this? And then it won't reflect good on you. You can realize that you are provided with invoices that have dates that belong to the prior period year. But if you're just looking for names and numbers, you'll find that maybe on the invoice they still have the same supplier or the same data, right? So the names and the amount may be the same, right? But the date is the one that will be able to tell you if the invoice which was provided is applicable for this year. They are recurring clients, they are recurring debtors. Just make sure that you're not one of those people who just tick something as it's there, but in actuality the invoice will actually be for the prior year. So things like minutes for board meetings, you also want to inspect that to see if there were any authorizations of big purchases and everything. That can be helpful to know how risky the audit is and everything. So yeah, just make sure that you inspect thoroughly whatever documents you are given to inspect, right? So the 8th thing that I have for you guys is that SICA actually requires you to serve diligently. So by that, you're not supposed to be involved with other companies, you're not supposed to be working on other companies, you're not supposed to be running another company, you're just supposed to be working on the training only. You're supposed to be just doing the articles only for the course of the 3 years. So yeah, actually that's actually a serious requirement and you need to take that seriously. So if you're someone who was working prior and you now want to start doing your articles, you may want to consider having to like resign from your other job and not do them all at once, because that's not allowed. So the 9th thing that I have for you guys is to just stay alert. Check your emails every morning and just like every night, maybe at close of business. Just make sure that you go through your emails, because sometimes they can schedule a meeting very late in the day, and if you don't check for the next morning or something, and if you don't check your email at night or in the morning, you might not be aware, and you don't want to be that person that doesn't show up to a meeting because they did not see an email, you know, like. So that thing of not really being used to checking your emails, that happens in varsity. You have to leave it behind and you have to be more invested in actually knowing what's going on. So the 10th thing that I have for you guys is that you are going to make a lot of mistakes. Some of them will be so silly that you even feel like slapping yourself. Like you'll be like, how did I make that mistake? But it happens. I just want you to know so that when it actually happens, you're not too hard on yourself. You just pick yourself up and you're like, okay, you know what, I made this mistake, but I'm gonna learn from it. Because usually when you make mistakes, those silly mistakes, you remember, because obviously they'll be pointed out to you, so you will remember to not make them again in the future. So you're gonna be learning. As you make mistakes, you'll be learning. But just keep your head high and don't feel discouraged because of the amount of mistakes you'll be making, because I'm telling you, everyone else who'll be starting on with articles will actually be making mistakes. Just know that at the end of the day, you'll be there to learn. So work as hard as you can. There's no substitute for hard work. Work smart, work hard, learn new things, learn new Excel formulas, because they'll make your life easier. Sometimes you may find that you're taking a lot of time to complete something just because you don't know a specific formula in Excel. Someone else who knows that formula could actually do that task in 5 minutes, and you might be taking maybe 30 minutes to an hour. So you just need to keep your ears on the ground just to make sure that you know everything. You try and get as much information as possible to be able to work effectively and efficiently. Okay, so those are the 10 things I had for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope I was able to inform some of you guys on what to expect when you start your article. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video.